it comes out this Friday, but basically the gist of it was she said I was put in a cage. She was talking about her warm up area. She was like, I feel it's unnecessary that you needed to put these barricades around my warm up area, like I was gonna like run free or something. Anyways,
It is pretty funny. You know, I think that even we saw it, and I asked about it in one of the briefings early in the week because it sort of seemed like a bit of pageantry.
yeah.
You know, she got a positive test, or sorry, someone in her crew, she got contact traced
Hmm.
basically, right? So they wanted to isolate her, and she was getting tested every day, which is totally fine and
Hmm.
fair. But the problem is that they only tested everybody else once on Wednesday. So, or not even on Wednesday, on Monday. So then, and we got kind of the medical staff came and gave us a talk after we checked in, saying like, you know, all the normal stuff about heat and rhabdo and whatever. And then there's like, okay, you know, COVID
Hmm.
precautions, blah, blah, blah. You know, be really careful because we don't have any control over anything that's going on outside of the
Yeah.
venues. So when you go home at night or when you go to eat or you go whatever, you know, be mindful of that. And we were kind of like, well, so I asked, like, are you guys going to test us later in the week? Like on, you know, we have a full day off on Thursday. People can go do
Hmm.
whatever they want. The second you open the gates to a bunch of spectators
Yep.
who are coming in and aren't being tested or checked for vaccination status or whatever it is, you know, you're really like, this isn't a bubble. Like, this isn't even close to a bubble. So, are you going to test anybody later? And they just said no, unless people turn themselves in with symptoms. So we were kind of like, so I mean, it's almost luck of the
Yep.
draw. Like it's unlucky for Danielle and those girls, but by the time it was Friday, boy, I bet you could have tested any
Right.
number of people in the back there and probably got a positive test. So I think that you know, on the one side, I'm very much pro vaccination. I work in health. My partner's a
Yeah.
doctor. I'm very much like, hey, everybody who was coming there to compete, who wanted the best shot to perform their best, should have got vaccinated
Hmm.
ages ago. And I'm very much in that camp. But the fact that, you know, it was the luck of the draw and, you know, it was a bit of like there weren't any precautions or
Yeah.
follow up. It sort of bothered me a little bit where it's like, okay, we caught this person on Monday, so now they're in the doghouse for the entire remainder of the week. Where, like I said, if you'd have plucked somebody out of the line on Saturday, like you could have got a positive test and DQ'd them and whatever. So it seemed, you know, that didn't sit well with me either. And it was funny, like I said, a bit pageantry. She's totally right. I remember looking out and seeing where we would stand to watch the events when the heats before us were going in the warm up area. She had like another spot where they just had like the banisters we use for the
Exactly.
corrals. There was just four of them into a pen, and then she had a chair in the middle of it, and she could watch a different screen that was like 50 feet away from us. And so it was just it was a little bit much for I don't know for the fact that you weren't going to follow up with anybody else. It felt funny, but you know I don't know. It's is what it is. I'm glad she made the best of it. It seems. And hopefully she was reasonably good humored about it. I'm sure she has choice
Oh,
words about the experience though. She doesn't seem like a gal who filters her thoughts
no,
very
the
often.
the like she was awesome. It was, but yeah, very explicit for those listening. Lots of it, but it was, but I
I'm
mean,
sure I
like
believe
I
it.
think one of the thing about her is that she's just like, and I told her this. I was like, you're just like unapologetically you. Like you don't care who thinks what. It's like you're gonna be you, and if they don't like you, they can not follow you, they can not cheer for you, like whatever the case is. And I think to your point, kind of what she said was like, hey, look, I understand, like I'm the poster child of this now, and like I'm good for that, but it was a she kind of said it was a bit of a double standard in the sense that, like you said, you're not testing any of these people. People are having interactions with fans, which I think is a cool thing. I think it's a way for a fan to, get to know you guys in a way that they don't otherwise. But at the end of the day, it's like, you're right there with I don't know how many, thousands of people, right? So just a thought.
It was very much. I will say that I thought the precautions regarding the whole thing were extremely lacking. Um, and so it seemed silly to me to have the like
Yeah.
check-in testing and then nothing else for the rest of forever. You know, any other sport that's running that
Right.
stuff, they're testing daily, they're doing whatever, and it is, you know, it's a lot of drag to do that. But
Mm-hmm.
particularly the first few days of competition when the age groups and everything, when it was age groups and teams and individuals all in the back, that was an absolute circus. Everybody sharing equipment, everybody doing whatever. Like, I mean, yeah, I, I I would agree with her that it was very much a double standard. You got to show up, and if you were able to produce a negative test on Monday, it was a get out of jail free card for the entire week. And I
Yeah.
don't think that's what it should have been. But anyways, I'm
Yeah.
not the one in charge of the
Yeah.
protocols
So
here.
look, I don't want to make this whole thing about COVID. I just happened to be that we got off on Danielle Brandon, and anyways, she was an awesome. No, she was.
Oh, I'm glad you did. I'm sure she had
Yeah,
fun things
I
to
can't
say.
wait for that to come out on Friday. It was whew, yeah, it was heated. It was fun. She's a really good person, and I think it'll be fun to watch her in the next like several years, like what she's able to do, and really that camp is able to do. I'm like, obviously have you always trained alone, or have you trained with like a camp?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, periodically over the course of my career, I would say before the games, some years I'll go to Montreal and train with my coach
Mm-hmm.
for maybe 3 to 4 weeks. And she'll kind of have all of her athletes at the time come down. So, like, I think 2019, I had James Newbury, Sam Cornway, Laura Horvath. Was Laura there that year? No, maybe not. 2018, Laura was there though. Laura and Willie George and myself. And so I've had like periods where I'll do that for, less than a month. But for the duration of the year, I'm always by myself. I think I personally can only tolerate that for a shorter period of time. I think, especially because Michelle ends up having, it's not like personal issues with athletes. It's just that I think from a training perspective, um, and the athletes that I often am training with, like the year I had Sam and James, it's great, but
Yeah.
those are both also individual male competitors. And it becomes a little bit of a dick swinging competition. And I
Yeah.
think it's hard on your training. And it's like, this is the reality of it. Like, I think instead of training, you start to
Mm.
compete. And if you compete every day for 4 weeks, and then you try to show up to a competition, like you're
Yeah.
going to be trashed. It's really hard on your body to do that. I think you risk
Mm.
losing the intention of your stimulus. Some things are
Sure.
programmed for us to be like, this is an 80% effort workout. It's more about volume accumulation, blah, blah, blah. But you don't want to lose to whoever because you know that in
Yeah.
3 weeks' time you have to beat them. So, that starts to wear on you mentally. And I think that's to
Mm.
me the risk of the training camp thing. And that's why I think the versions of that we've seen be the most successful are versions with a male athlete and a female athlete who are not competing. They're able to push each other. Some workouts tip more towards the men's side, some tip more towards the female side. And so, you can have an engaging race and a push and a good training partner who has the same goals. And, you can get in that training camp, but there's no cost. If you lose to her, you're like,
100%. Yeah.
man, whatever. I'm not competing against her. It's fine. Um, so I think that there's less weight behind that. And so I think the versions of the camps we see work the best, the Matt and Tia's in 2018, Laura and I had that. I think that that's where we see it be the most effective. And I think there's just less baggage. But yeah, overall, I feel like I'm typically,
Mm.
90% of the time, 99% of the time by myself. Um, and then, people jump in on little things now and then at the gym, but certainly no games level athletes. So it's fun. I mean, I'm good at that. I think it takes
Mm.
a specific kind of person to be motivated like that. Some people enjoy it and are better at it, and some people aren't. I certainly enjoy the company, but I think I enjoy it because I do
Exactly.
it less
Well,
often.
it's interesting. I mean, even if you look at the podium, uh, even this year, I mean, it's mostly people that train alone. I mean, Justin, to my knowledge, trains alone. You and so Brent. So I think it's
Yep.
there's so much hype. Maybe is the right word. Whether it's the proven camp or obviously the mayhem camp or the comp, whatever. There's a lot of hype around these things, and so I was just curious to get your take on that as someone that's traditionally kind of been solo.
Yeah. I think that I think that your use of the word hype is extremely accurate. I think it's something that is fun to see, and everybody makes their YouTube vlogs, and it's like it's fun and engaging. and people are just kicking out sweet content. But I don't think it's necessarily the best thing for performance. And it may be for some athletes and not for others. Like I said, there's a total individual aspect to that.
Yeah.
But actually, when we were done the competition and we were standing in the back, I was kind of, Justin and I and Brent were watching the women's heat, standing together, just chatting. And Justin's actually the one that brought that up. And he's like, hey, I gotta say this, and I love it, but how, there's been all this hype around all the different training camps and how they were going to perform this year, because there's been a shift for sure in this year, that a lot of people have moved to do that, and there's been a lot of that going on. So people were generally curious to see how it would play out. And he said, like, I gotta say, I'm very happy to see at the end of it, when everything settles, the three guys on the podium are people who train by themselves. And like, obviously the three of us who do that, we're like, yeah, totally, we agree. But I'll be honest, it like, I take no small joy in seeing that. I think it's great. I love seeing that, like, it's not about the hype. And I think that for all the hype that, yeah, like Mayhem gets, and, Proven and Comp Train and all that, like, at the end of the day, you're an individual on the floor, and you need to be able to do that. So I think there's a lot of value that can come from training with the right people who push you at the right times, but I don't think more is always better. So I don't think always adding another person to the camp and doing this and that and having these like live-in camps is necessarily the pathway to success for everyone. And I also respect that this is very much in its infancy. It's the first time we've really seen it. It's like the first year, and there's for sure growing pains that are going to come along with that. People learning the things that I've kind of talked about, like, oh, I think that I got caught up, competing against so-and-so for the last 3 months instead of focusing on the training that I needed to do. So I think that as people learn that, both athletes and coaches, they can apply this concept better. And then we might see it start to bear fruit in 2 years or 3 years, right? So I respect entirely that there's that aspect of it, but I totally think that at the end of the day, even seeing on the women's side too, Annie's got a bit of a crew too out there, but like Laura is very much a lone wolf. So it's fun to see that those people who have that, and I think it's, people who are strong as individuals and can train by themselves, I think they've really got it between the ears, right? Like, I think it takes a special person to be able to do that every day.
Man.
So I think that's what you see, is like, those are the people who are willing to do it. And it's like, I don't need you there to tell me to do it. Like, I'm ready and willing to do it every day on my own. And if you're there, great. But if you're not, doesn't change a thing. So I think that, we have strong teams. Brent has a strong team behind him. Justin absolutely has a strong team in his corner. Like, it's not that it's just you with nobody. I think it's very rare to see that, but you don't need to have, a training buddy every day. And I think that if you need that to get in the gym and do your work, then you're going to have a tough time.
Well, it was just interesting. I had to laugh because there were so many people that were, very vocal about it. I'll just take the Proven camp, for example, only because it was kind of the newer one of them. And, it was like all this, I think, yeah, you're right. The word is hype around, like, is this the year Brooke is going to get on the podium, or is this the year that, Will Morad is this, and to take, nothing away from those guys. And obviously what happened to Brooke was like, that was rough to watch, man, like really rough to watch.
And she was amazing up to that point as well.
100%.
Right. I think she was very much in the hunt and shaping up for her best finish ever. Right. So there's still value there. Like,
agreed. No, and I'm not. Yeah, and I want to be clear. Right? I'm not shitting on anybody. I want to be very clear about that. But I also think on the flip side of that, it's worth noting. It's like, and maybe I'm wrong, and tell me if I'm wrong. It's like, just because Tia's there, sure, she can push the intensity, but it's still an individual sport at the end of the day. I mean, this isn't a team thing. This isn't a Tia's points give you points type of deal. And sure, could a rising tide raise boats? Maybe, yeah, I think to an extent, but how much of that is just fixed? It's like, hey, this is just kind of where you are, like I think there's a little bit of that too.
Yeah. There's a couple interesting parts of that, and like one of them is, I know when that Proven camp first started, I think Brooke was the first one who kind of caught on with Shane, and I knew Tia was moving to Nashville, and I was curious. I saw her kind of training there. I was curious how that was going to go, and I knew Brooke was looking for a new coach. And when that started, I was kind of like, man, like Shane taking on another top female seems weird to me. And not because so this is like I kind of think it's funny because it's sort of like to me, Tia and Shane don't see Brooke as any kind of threat to Tia,
Exactly.
or else this wouldn't exist. So that's like Tia being like an absolute baller, and she's just a thug and like doesn't care. She's like, yeah, come on down. Like, I don't care. I'll tell you everything, and like it's still not gonna
And
happen.
that's kind of my point.
So I think that's kind of gangster, and I think that's sweet. But I think that the interesting part about that is I think you're totally right that from Tia's perspective, she stands nothing to gain. I think to her it's fun. She kind of gets to hang out with friends and whatever. I think her training is not improved necessarily by having
Yeah.
other athletes around. So to her, she's only giving in that relationship. Everybody else may stand to gain by seeing what she does, or even just little things. Sometimes seeing how people break down workouts or how they do their transitions or little tricks of like how they learn and adapt. She's only giving. I don't think she's standing to gain much in that. And I feel a little bit like that when it comes to me training with people too. Is like, how much am I going to gain in this relationship, or am I just going to be the guy selling secrets? And I got, how much of that do I want to do? I don't mind doing some of it for friends or for people that, again, I don't necessarily perceive as a threat, but I think that there's a little bit of that around, right? It's like how much you don't want to sell your secrets, right? Unless you're just like, whatever, you can have that one. I don't even need it. And you need it more than me, right? But it's interesting. So, yeah, I think that's sort of a unique position, and I always found that kind of curious. And from my perspective, again, on the training camp thing, people are just at different points in their
Hmm.
lives. Like Tia was moving, and like where am I going to move on? There was already like 3 or 4 games athletes in Nashville, and they were looking around the area. It's like that made total sense. And then they were starting to launch something, Tia and Shane, anyways. So it was a total.
Yeah.
It was a perfect storm. It made a ton of sense. For me to try to do something like that with my coach, she lives in Montreal. I live on Vancouver Island now. I have my partner's here. She's on mat leave now, but she up to just
Hmm.
recently was working as a doctor. We have a new baby. Like for me to uproot myself to move to Montreal is
Yeah.
unrealistic, and I would never do it. And she would never ask. And then like likewise for me to be like, hey, how's about you maybe like move you and your partner and your business to Vancouver Island and maybe we can do something fun. Like Vancouver Island's remote. Like it's not like we're gonna get a ton of people to come hang out on the island for a fitness retreat all the time. So it just like, the logistics of it don't make sense for me in my life and for her in her life. And I think that I've always kind of had, I don't want to say one foot out, but like I've had
Sure.
another life outside of CrossFit. So it's sort of I have to weigh that in those decisions and be like, okay, well, if I'm going to try to do this, like, how's it going to affect the other elements in my life? And so, there's some of the training camps, like the national one, I think a lot of people were already set there, but ones like Comp Train, where I think they had several athletes who moved this year to go live in Boston, that would be more like what my situation would be, where I'd be like, oh, I got to move my life somewhere else. And like, I have a job here. I have a job and like a partner and a baby. And like, we just bought a house. Like, that's not going to happen. Right. So, you just have to do things a slightly different way. So, and I value those other things a lot. And I think it's a huge part of me and my life. So, I'm certainly not at a point in my
Yeah.
life where I'm willing to give that stuff up to make more space for CrossFit. I feel like CrossFit takes up enough space for me. So, um, yeah, anyway, so it's like it depends where people are in their careers and where they see
Hmm.
this as their long-term play, and everybody has a different attitude towards it. But I'm interested to see how it plays out in the next couple years. I think it's maybe a little bit unfair to judge it on one year's performance, and I certainly have and will continue to because it's worked out great for me, right? My perspective, my bias going in has shown to be the right way. So obviously I feel like, validated so much by that. But I think that realistically you've got to give it a little bit of time to grow and see what comes out of it. And I mean, they did great too, right? Like you said, athletes
Yeah.
like Brooke, like even like Will was in the top 20, like did great again this year. Like they did great. So,
So now
you
I'm
know,
figuring out why people wanted you on so badly, because you just like no fucks given, give me to it, just straight up. Like I can appreciate that.
I'll tell you what I think. I'll tell you what I think. And I'll pretend it's
You'll die
right
on the
too.
sword
I'll
if it
pretend it's
needs to
like
be.
the right thing. But I'll also I tend to own my bias too. I fully know. I know why I think the things I think. So,
So
but
I
I'm
want to
not
talk
afraid to
about
say
your.
things. So I'm friendly with most of those athletes too. So I like they're fine. They know
It's
me.
tongue
They
in
know
cheek, exactly.
I'm
Yeah,
kidding.
for
I say a
sure.
lot of things tongue in cheek.
I want to talk a little bit about your 3 event wins, and I don't care to talk any about the swim. I feel like the last 3 podcasts you've been on, as I was preparing for this, I try not to just ask people the same questions. I wouldn't want to be asked the same questions, anyways. And everyone was really gung ho on the swim, and so I totally understand.
You know what? It's like you got to ask. I understand journalism, and I think that it's like at a
I
certain point you're not doing your job if you don't ask. So I get it,
I
and so I'm
actually
happy to answer the questions, but it's fine.
no,
But if you
I
don't
thought
feel
I
the need,
really
that's all right.
understood. Was like, hey, I came out of the water about 20th, and the kayak fucking sucked. So there we go. Is that the gist of it?
It was a long
I mean,
paddle.
I was like, damn. I was like,
That's pretty much it.
look, I know like per capita, Canada has just a shit ton of lakes, man. I was like, are you out there kayaking? I guess I don't know, or is it just like
Well, I think the reality of it for a lot of people too, and I think this isn't just Canadians. This is everybody. Like we all kind of looked at each other when that got announced, and people were like, "When was the last time you raced in a kayak or
that's
tried
fair?
to go fast even?" Like
That's
everyone was
fair.
I've kayaked like on a date, and like when I'm out with like my partner for like a casual paddle on the water. Like I live on the ocean, like we see kayak now and then, but we usually do like a very casual paddle, and then at some point you kind of just like lash the rafts together and float for a little
And
bit, and
talk.
like it's not. That's like it's your active recovery thing, like your casual time out, right? So I think most people were unsure how they would fare in a long distance for like a sustained effort when you're in a race. Um, yeah, and I don't know. I think that given what the kayaks were, I just sort of like my positioning wasn't great. And so I was just pushing a lot of water and I had trouble
Yeah,
like cutting through the water. And so I just did a lot of work and didn't move very fast. That's the way it goes.
and that's that. So
Yeah.
when event 2 that you did incredibly well on, I mean, incredibly well is an understatement. You smashed everybody. Let's just call it what it is. When that initially came out, and I can't remember exactly how it was announced, but essentially it was just like you're going to do some pick flips, and then you're going to have a butt ton of muscle ups. Was there ever a thought? Because I heard a couple athletes say this. I think Jason Hopper was the guy I heard say this. He was like, when I practice it, I'm thinking bar muscle ups for that many reps. He goes, I never thought we would do bar then ring, excuse me, ring then bar then ring. I mean, was that ever a thought in your head?
I thought we wouldn't do both because I thought they would save them to maybe do in two
Mm-hmm.
different workouts. Because bar muscle ups are also an easy thing for the Coliseum. So I thought that given history of what we see in Northfield events and Coliseum events, I was preparing for ring muscle ups on the long straps in the North Park. Because I thought that was just harder and it was like it would make that workout more visually appeasing on the field, and I just felt like that would separate people more. It made the first two movements were very much like bigger guy, strongman
Mm-hmm.
type movements, where you would see bigger athletes, a certain type of athletes, say, gain an advantage to the rings, and then you would see those athletes then lose their advantage there, and then have the advantage back on the return. So it could make an exciting horse race where there's some jostling, like a lot of people passing up for the lead. So that's what I thought it would be. I thought the sled was going to be a hand over hand pull. I think a lot of people did to gas your arms out. Having it be a pull was like fine. Didn't change much. It actually saved your arms a bunch. I thought the flip would be at least
Mm,
double that distance. Um, and then, I mean, they also added muscle ups. I think they initially kind of announced it as 42, and then it would end up
yeah,
being
it did.
48. But yeah, I didn't think there would be double. Actually, when we were on the training days, leading up to the games, like, Monday and Tuesday, as we were in the warm up area getting
Hmm.
ready for the competition, I was talking with Adrian Mundweiler, I think, and he said that he's like, maybe it'll be both. Like you do half ring, half bar, and I was like, oh, I hadn't really considered that. Um, but I mean, bar muscle ups, I think are easier, frankly,
Yeah.
especially for bigger athletes. So it narrows that gap, and so I thought that my hope was that it would be ring because I think it would separate more
Mm,
based on skill. So the way they did it actually ended up being pretty brilliant because I think you go from the
yeah.
rings at the start when you're fresher and people can kind of attack it more. And then you go to the bar, and because it's easier, you don't really realize how gassed your press out's getting and how
It's a
tired your
trap.
pull's getting. And then when you get back to the rings, it hit you really hard, and you're like, "Oh shit!" Like I didn't realize how deep I had dug myself. So I know that workout, given for me that I was in such a bad place, I was like, "Hey, my goal after the event one was just to try to get back to the top heat at the very least by the end of the day to not lose a heat advantage moving forward in the weekend, and I likely get to top five. Uh, in 2018, we had 4 events on day one, and I crashed the bike in the first event and took a 36th. And by the end of day one, I was like, I think I was
Yeah.
fourth or no, sixth, I think, or fifth or sixth overall. So I knew, like, I had precedent personally that I could do that in 4 events, 400 points. It's fine. You got no points in event one, but there's 300 points on the table, and you'll be fine. So that was the goal, was to get back to like a top five-ish position, and that
Mm,
being a workout that I thought I could do fine at. I do pretty well typically with some odd object work. The flips weren't a problem for me, and I'm good at muscle ups. So I made the
yeah.
decision to be very aggressive, and I was already kind of backed into a corner after one event. So yeah, I it wasn't about the first two things, the sled and the flips. It was sort of like,
Hmm.
don't fall too far behind, but don't be stupid and like jack your heart rate up or do anything aggressive. And then I was like, you're gonna do 12 ring muscle ups unbroken, sets of six on the bar. And then I wanted to do 3 sets on the rings on the way back, but I got a no rep on my first rep, which was a terrible call if you ask me. My lockouts are brilliant, but so it kind of changed it. I ended up doing 4 reps, but I got credit for 3 on the first one. So I was going to do 3 sets of 4, and then I ended up doing like 3, 4, and I had 5 left,
Hmm.
and I didn't want to overreach going back to the pig, so I did like a 3-2. And it was a bit weird. Like I thought people, I think in my head, people were closing on me on the rings more than they were, because I
Yeah.
was like, oh shit, I'm tired and I'm breaking these a lot more than I thought. So I pictured everybody being a lot better on the rings than they were, because I thought I had made like a technical or like a tactical error in my strategy, being like, oh fuck, like I blew myself up. I didn't respect this
Hmm.
second set of ring muscle ups as much as I should, because I thought, hey, like you're good on the rings, but
Yeah.
obviously everybody else felt the same as I did. So, in my mind, they were closing a lot, and I could hear the announcers kind of saying, like, you've got so and so was like 2 or 3 reps behind. So when I got to the pig, my plan was to just do like 3 flips as fast as you could, so that when the next guy gets off the rings, I look way far away. So I did 3 flips, and then I took like a pretty decent rest. And I don't know who was next off the rings. A couple guys, like I think Scott and BK and a few people like that. So, but I think when you get off and you see
Hmm.
like, oh, like I've already pulled away, I'm basically done the flips. Now they just, people make the decision that they're not
Right.
racing me anymore. Like they're racing the next guy next to them, because I'm already gone. So it was like that was like again a tactical decision to, on the return trip, make an aggressive move there as well, so that you
Hmm.
could mentally make people disengage from you. And then it wasn't, the next 2 flips were fine. And I kind of, when we were doing the bar muscle ups, I was able to just like look at the scoreboard and see what the time to beat was. And so I got to the sled with like about a little over a minute in hand. So I was like, like you're fine. Just like as long as you don't stop or like blow a tire on the way back, you're fine and you'll win. So um, yeah, so it was good. I was aggressive in that workout though, and I think it wasn't smooth. I kind of like hitched at a couple different sections. and had to regroup. But it was that kind of workout for everybody, I
Mm-hmm.
think. I think you kind of got slapped in the face a little bit on the return trip on the rings. And then I think the pig people struggled more than they thought on the way back as well, some athletes. So anyway, it was a good one on paper for me, so it's nice to execute on those. I think that those types of workouts actually stress me out more than any other ones, because I think you know that anything less than those kind of top three finishes and that is
Mm-hmm.
not because you weren't able, it's because you didn't execute well, and that hurts way more. Like if I expect a 20th place in the swim and I get a 30th place, I don't really care that much. If I expect a first place
Mm.
finish and I get a fifth, that hurts more. And it's like, the points difference, the way the spread was
Yeah.
this year is less on that top end, but it just like that feels more like an execution problem. And like that was like a problem with my like the way I dealt with the workout today. It was either a strategic error or something, but you had all the ability in the world to,
Mm-hmm.
to succeed. Whereas if you get beat at something where people are just frankly better than you at it, then like, hey, you got beat by the better man and that doesn't hurt. It's maybe annoying and maybe gives you something to work on for next time, but there's nothing else you could do about that today. So yeah, it's nice. It's almost reassuring when you hit the finish line on those kind of ones.
It's interesting you brought up about the about the point spread, because and I've heard a lot of different people talk about a lot of different ideas and thoughts when it comes to the points, and does it, because the way the system works, obviously, I mean, and you're a prime example. You can get a, I don't know, 35, 36 place finish and then come win an event and get 100 points and really be back in the mix, especially early on. I mean, do you think it pays to be that and that specialist? And I don't mean specialist to say you only can weight lift and then you suck at gymnastics and your aerobic system sucks. That's not what I'm saying. Just simply that, do you think it pays to be the guy that can take the consistent 100 points, or do you think it's just like, hey, as long as you're in the top, I don't know, 6, 7, 8, then from a mathematical standpoint, you've won the CrossFit Games?
Well, so in the system the last few years, it paid a lot more to win events, which is ironic because I never used to win events. And then now when they changed the system back to reward consistency more, now suddenly I've won 3 events this year and like matched my like career event wins and won games. But they changed the point spread this year to be a level spread, I think, for most of the way down. It was like a 3 point drop all the way through. So it
Yep.
actually rewards consistency more than high end finishes. Whereas in the old system, it was like a 6 point spread for the first several places, then four, then three, then two or something. So it was like a sliding scale. So the high end finishes allowed you to create more gap from the rest of the field.
Mm-hmm.
So you actually got rewarded more for event wins than disproportionately than like say a sixth or something like that. So it
Mm-hmm.
sort of made it valuable to, if you're good at something, you might as well be really good at it. So in like something like say if you are going to take a 30th place finish and I could work all year and make that a 28 a 25th place finish and make up 5 places, or if I was going to take third in a workout and I can put a little work in there and take a first instead, and it's only a two
Mm-hmm.
place difference, but that 2 place difference is worth more points. So
Yep.
that was the old system, and now they've switched to a more consistent system. And I think that what you have to look at is Justin Medeiros won the games and only won one workout at the end, and he was in a basically guaranteed position going into the last workout, having won none. So this year, consistency was by far more important. And it's still, I mean, event wins will get you there. Like even like myself, I won some events and I bonked a few. I think I had 2 or 3 that I would take back in a heartbeat. But um, a guy like Guy Malheiros was like not a specialist in the way that you're saying, like a specific movement, but
Mm-hmm.
he's a power athlete. Like any
100%.
event with high power output, which is like a time domain, he's exceptional at. And so he won 3 events because they were power events, and he like smashed the field. Um, and so that gave him a huge boost. And I don't know where he ended up overall, like seventh or something like that, though, right? Like still in a
Yes.
very high
Mm-hmm.
place. So and he had a couple bonks as well, a couple 20 something finishes, and but he was able to hide those with really strong finishes whenever the energy system was in his wheelhouse, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, obviously it's better to be great at everything. Like look at the Mat Frasers and the Tia Tumis, right? Like yeah,
Obviously,
obviously
it's
if you
good
can
just
just
to
win
win.
everything, you're gonna win. But
Yeah.
right this year, the point system was more. I think it would they normalized it to be to reward
Mm.
consistency more than it has in the past little while,
Hmm.
which is cool. I think the one thing now with the cuts looking like they're sort of going to be here to stay is that later workouts points become more valuable.
Hmm.
So, in the first stage of the competition where we're 40 athletes, it's only a 3 point drop between places. But then once they cut to 20, it's a 5 point spread. So, if I take a third place finish in event three, I'm getting whatever it is, 94 points still. But if I take a third place finish in the last event, like I'm only getting 90 points, right? So it later on, like so in the battle in the end for me and Justin, for me to beat him in those late events was worth more than him beating me in the early events.
Yep.
So, it wasn't, I still needed him I needed him to have a miss at some point in order to try to win. But I was able to like slowly chisel away points, even beating him by only one place by more than he was earlier
Yeah.
in the competition. So, that changes, and I don't know if I love that because the way that the events are effectively random, and if you end up with a really tight points
Yeah.
race where like someone makes the podium by 1 point, if you change the order of the workouts, you change the podium because the
Because of the
points
point
are
distribution.
rewarded
Yeah.
differently. Yeah, so that I don't love I think it's hard to avoid it. Um, so it just sort of is what it is. It's complicated because in the early stages of the competition, we've got 9 events this year, and I think that predominantly they were like outdoor athleticism style events, which are great,
Hmm.
and I think they're the funnest part of the games.
Right.
But if you're a pure kind of CrossFitter, I could see why you'd be pissed at that because you're waiting for the thrust or pull up workout, which isn't going to happen until you're cut. And like,
Exactly.
so you could have made your 100 points there, but you never made it there. Same with like the one at max snatch. If you're that guy and you never make it to that workout, you're like, well, that's 100 points I would have had instead of my like 20th place finish in a 10K run. But that's why I think there needs to be a baseline level of consistency,
Mm.
obviously, and good at everything. But yeah, you gotta, if you get your events, you better swing hard because you might not be around long enough to see your home runs.
Hey, at least they didn't cut right after. Uh, well, wait, did they cut right after a sprint? Hold on. Let me let me go back. No,
What was event nine? No, event nine was
event nine, the Echo Bike Snatch. So
that was still kind
yeah,
of a
it's still
sprint,
kind
but
of a 2 minute work, 2 minute, 3 minute
yeah,
workout.
yeah, I think we were, yeah, the top times were under four for sure. But that, yeah, I mean, but that was like, that's fitness workout.
Yeah, it's more
Um,
CrossFit. Yeah.
I think that they did a pretty good job this year. Like I think there was having 9 events before cutting 10 athletes was great. Like I think nine is
Mm.
more than enough. Like we've that at that point things are taking shape. If you've made a mistake or two, there's still been opportunity to rectify it. Um, and if you've made 3 or 4 or 5 mistakes in 9 events, maybe you
Right.
get
Yeah.
cut. And like that's unfortunate, but that's competition too, right? I think at that point, um, you need to be able to perform on that weekend. And yeah, like sometimes 2019 I wasn't able to do that. I think I was a lot fitter than I showed. But if you make enough mistakes in a short period of time, like you just get cut.
Yeah.
That's the way it works. Um, but I think with 9 events, there's a lot of opportunity to undo mistakes. And if you can't do it in 9 events, then yeah, then you might just get cut. This year, frankly, we didn't cut that many
No.
people because a lot of people, I mean, on the men's side, we had 2 Russian athletes not be able to make it, and we probably had 3 withdrawals by that point, 3 or 4. I think we only cut 4 people or something like that at the first cut. So it was a pretty crazy year. There was a lot of for us, we had 2 not make it for uh, visas. The women's side had 2 medical withdrawals for COVID before the competition even started. So both fields, I think, were starting
Hmm.
at 38, and then I think both fields had 2 to 3 medical withdrawals for various reasons before the cut to 30.
You're
So
right.
it was people were dropping like flies. We were a little nervous about that, I think, as
So
we
I
went
don't
on.
know what account. I don't know if it was Morning Chalk Up or Heat On Minded. I really can't remember. But they essentially put a chart of COVID and medical withdrawals versus people that Dave cut, and it was 2 to 1. The COVID and medical withdrawals had more people than the people that Dave actually ended up cutting. So it was, I mean, to your point, that was kind of the way it
Yeah.
was. You mentioned something earlier that I thought was really interesting. You said, Justin went, 14 events, and then his 15th event, he finally got an event win. As I was kind of looking at the point differential between you and Justin before we came on, and I'm sure you've seen this at this point, but it was interesting to see that you beat Justin in 8 of the 15 events. Like, you had a higher placing than Justin in 8 of the 15 events. Did you know that?
I had heard it somewhere. That's not enough though. I think it should have been better. I had a couple misses where I gave up. I think that the worst for me, the worst stage of the weekend was Friday afternoon. The two clean workouts and the handstand walk, all three of those in a row, I completely bombed. And like placings aren't terrible, but like relative to execution, I feel like I gave up about 1,000,000 points in those three events, and it was like, man, I wanted to dig in a hole and die. But
Wow.
that was a tough period of the weekend, and that's when Justin took the leader jersey, was after the
Yep.
second clean event, and never gave it up, right? So he performed very well on those three in a row. And that was sort of right where that was where the momentum kind of changed in the weekend. I think like I floundered at the start, and then I put together a strong start or end of Wednesday, started Friday with an event win, and then I just like could not get it together, and then kind of put a good one together again on
Mm-hmm.
Friday night. And then on Saturday, I started feeling like better. And I don't know if it's a bit of being away from live competition for a long time. I just felt like I didn't feel comfortable for quite a long time. I had some issues with my stomach on Friday too, but I think that, I just didn't, I felt off, and I didn't execute well. Like I was not proud whatsoever of those three events in a row. And I think that that's where I really gave up a lot of points where, he beat me in those three
Mm.
and by a lot of places. And like, that's how it worked. And then, a lot of the events where I beat him, he still did well at, right? I was beating him by 4 or 5 or one or two
Yeah.
places only, right? So he didn't give up a lot of points. And so that coming into Saturday was the whole game, right? Like I came in on Saturday, the running event, I wasn't trying to do anything crazy on. I was like, frankly, I had some knee issues earlier in the year, and I wanted to run it and not hurt my knee for the rest of the 5 events. So I ran fine, and I made a responsible decision, and it was good.
Mm-hmm.
I had like a tenth or
Mm-hmm.
something, and it was good. Don't do anything dumb. But Justin was aggressive in that workout, and got me by a handful of places there again. And then moving on from there, like the pegboard and the snatch were good events for me where I made up a lot of ground. And again, at that point, we had
Mm-hmm.
dropped to the 5 point spread. So now it was important to make up ground. So up to there, Justin beat me probably to event 10, events 1 through 10. I bet you he beat me on like seven of them. And then I beat him on the pegboard and the snatch and the yoke and the handstand push
Yep.
up, and then he beat me on the last one. So like my last stage of competition was very strong, but at that point he knew exactly what he needed to do, and all it
Mm-hmm.
was stay close to me. Like he had enough points in hand that all he needed to do was stay really close to me, which is great competitive strategy. And I think that I don't know if he spoke with his coach about it or whatever, but I was the target. And if he can stay close enough to fucking spit on me, then like, hey,
Yeah.
you win the CrossFit Games. And so I knew that, and so I'm sure he knew that. So it was I think I got asked it after the handstand push-up workout, after those 4 events in a row, um, about like what's it like to like I keep winning the events over him, but he hasn't given up points. And I said it's frustrating. It's like it's super annoying. And it's as simple as that. It's like I know exactly what needs to happen, and I need him to crash and burn at least once. And he was just
Mm-hmm.
good enough; it wasn't going to happen, right? The only places it could have happened is on the snatch or on the handstand push-up one, where either like you miss a lift in a high pressure situation
Mm-hmm.
and give up 10 places, or you can't do that skill, which is a random out of the box skill, and if you don't have it,
Yeah.
then you're kind of hooped on that one. So those were the two places that I identified as like potential turning points. And if it wasn't there, it wasn't going to be anywhere, because he can compete. He's good at CrossFit. He's fit. He's
Mm-hmm.
adaptable. Like he's just good enough. at that. Like I made too many mistakes early, and I just like there wasn't any digging out of that hole. So it was good. I mean, I was happy with the way I competed in the second half, but it was just, yeah, like I said, too little, too late. Like I think that, he was already, and I think once you're in that position and you feel in control, and he was competing extremely well, you're kind of in the zone and in that flow state. It's just hard to knock
Yeah.
a guy like that off, right? He was in the groove, and the only other thing was I knew he ripped his hand on the snatch on Saturday night. So going into that last event, I was like, the only way that this changes is if for some reason he's like slipping everywhere on the
Mm.
pull-ups because he has a rip on his hand. But if he gets off the pull-ups like even close to me, there's no way. I think
It
I
was a
needed
lot.
like
Yeah,
seven
it
or
was a
eight
lot.
people to come between me and him. And I was like, seven or eight people haven't beaten him in a workout in 2 days. So I was just like, that to
Mm.
me already, like I already knew that going in. It's like you
No,
need him to
obviously.
like get
Yeah.
hurt, which I don't want. Or you're not going to win, right? So I was just like, and I was already mathematically locked into second place going into that workout too. So
Irrelevant.
it sort of made the last workout.
Yeah.
I didn't have a great finish in the last workout, and it's kind of partly because of that. I think I attacked up to like the end of the pull-ups, and then he got off the pull-ups like 5 reps ahead of me or something, and he picked up the lunges right away. And then like we were just like lunging, and he was 6, 7 steps ahead of me, and I was just kind of like, look, you're not gonna. There's no way. Like, there's just no way unless someone like shoots him from the crowd, right? Like, so I kind of like chilled a little bit on that last workout in the lunges. I didn't do anything stupid. I ended up kind of like
You
edging
definitely
Bjorkman
did.
and probably
Yeah.
ruining his podium shot. But yeah, I'll be honest, I
With
was
him and
not
Brent.
unaware of that race. So he was on my left, and I knew what was going on there. So, I think that yeah, that was what it was. Like I think that I knew more than he and his coach wanted to admit going into that last workout that he had already won. As long as he executed a reasonable workout, basically if he took a
Mm.
top 10 in a field of 20, he was guaranteed to win. I was like, at that point of the games, I think there was no doubt in my mind he was able to do that. So yeah, it was what it was, and I'm like, it's been a while. I was happy to come back to the games and perform well. I made too many mistakes, without a doubt, on the week. I think it's hard not to look at the workouts we had and feel like I underperformed and definitely had a more than a good chance to win that I let pass by. But I can't
Yeah.
dwell on that for very long, right? So, and I think,
Yeah.
like I said, Justin, without a doubt, performed extremely well, better than me across the 15 tests, more consistent, and I think he deserved to win without any question.
It's interesting. You said something to the effect of it had been your first live competition in a while. You were kind of you and quite a few others were in an interesting situation where you hadn't had a live competition for whatever it was, a year. Obviously the Open being
I
online,
think 18 months for me.
18 months. Wow.
I think since Wadapalooza 2020 was the last live competition I did.
Oh wow. Okay.
So
So
that would have been like end of January or something like that, or February 2020.
yeah. So was that? I mean, I don't know, and maybe I'm off kilter on this one, but it seems like going into something like the games in 18 months, haven't had any live competition, where you're staring a dude in the face and having to make those moves. That's when you have locked leaderboards is irrelevant because you don't even know. It's just I just go in a place and I die and I hope it's enough, right? I mean, I'm sure you have an idea of where you are, but I mean, did that have any play to it? Did that affect your psychology in any way, kind of going in?
I think it's different lining up next to someone. And I like it, but it's a skill. And I think there's ring rust that goes along with that. And like I said, I didn't feel comfortable or like myself till kind of Saturday. Like I flailed a lot of Friday, like, and I won an event on Wednesday and an event on Friday, but like, I felt like on Wednesday, it was like you have to do this. And it was like, it didn't feel smooth. It felt
Hmm.
frantic. And like I pulled it off, but like it didn't feel good. And some of those events, like the sprint, I made some aggressive decisions and pulled off. I felt like I pulled a couple things out of my ass on that first day and managed to get myself back in contention, which was great. And I needed to do it. but it didn't feel smooth and controlled like I would like I normally compete. Like I didn't feel composed.
Mm.
I didn't feel like I felt erratic and like I was just flailing. So I think it took until Saturday before I felt confident again that like, all right, like you know what you're doing. You're better than you've been showing. Like you can be in control and beat people on the floor. So I like competing live. I think there's a lot of skill to it. Things like I talked about, like when I came off the rings and tried to break the elastic with other
Hmm.
athletes. I think there's strategies, race strategies that play out live on a competition floor when you see
Right.
competitors. There's a lot that goes into like knowing what the times to beat are and making decisions that even if you're going to win your heat, that reflect beating other times. So I think that there's a lot of skill that goes into that that I'm pretty good at, that you don't get to do online. You don't know where people are. You're racing ghosts, and you've kind of got to floor yourself. But when you can see people race, like same with the rope climb sandbag workout, like I was controlled in the first round. I held steady pressure on this rounds 2 and 3 and pulled myself ahead to like a 20-second buffer. And then I just didn't, I just
Mm.
held people off in the last round. I didn't go that hard. I just knew I had to stay ahead of Brent. And I just kind of, as soon as I got on the ski, I like make decisions. Like I ran back to the rope and it was like, you got to be doing your second rope climb by the time he gets back. And then when you get on the ski, count the seconds. Look at the clock, count the seconds before he gets to the ski, and know what your buffer is. And I had about a 20-second lead when he got to the ski. So I was like, cool, don't ski that hard. Clear the sandbag, run to the sandbag and go, and you win. And it's like, you don't need to murder yourself on every event if you can make decisions like that and have a certain level of awareness that I think some people do
Yeah.
better than others. So there's race strategy, and I love that in live competition. It makes it a game, and I think it makes, you need a baseline level of fitness that'll allow you to do that. But once you've got that, there's a lot of things you can do on the floor to crack other athletes and um, to increase your odds. So I think that's a skill, and I'm glad to be able to
Hmm.
exercise that muscle again
Yeah.
because it's been a while. And yeah, like being able to, even like I said, feel good and comfortable and controlled and not stressed, and using that kind of stressful energy in a productive way, and not letting that anxiety kind of
Hmm.
cloud your ability to make good decisions or things like that. So, it was really nice to be back doing it. It took me, admittedly, longer than I would have liked to get back to a comfort level of doing that. And I think always in a competition, you settle into it as you go. Like you're always going to have first event jitters because it's been a while since you've seen other athletes. You don't know what
Yeah.
everybody else is bringing to the table. And then as the competition wears on, you get a better feel for where everybody else is at, where you're at, you know, how even just how what the attrition rates like for other athletes. Like you show up on Sunday and see who's doesn't look like themselves on Sunday and who's still got a lot of fight left in them. So there's a lot of that stuff that goes into it, and I really enjoyed being able to do it again. But I don't, like I said, I didn't do it well until too late, and I think
It's
that was
interesting
part of
you
the
say that
problem.
because I mean you bring up Event 5 and you talk about people cracking. I mean people cracked on that event. I mean it was like there were some folks that went out way too hot and it was interesting because obviously that's a 4 round workout and it seemed like an eternity out there, but it wasn't something that you like. I mean, you seemed like you were in control the whole time. It's not like you got out in front and stayed in front. Just like you said, you kind of picked people off, and then it was interesting because I was like, man, is like Jason Hopper gonna like run this table? Talking about people cracking, and then just kind of have a come apart there on the last round where obviously, I think we all kind of saw what
Boy, that
happened.
was awesome, wasn't it?
And like anybody that does CrossFit has like been there, like you know what I'm saying, like gone too hot and just like the wheels of the bus come off. Um, whew, wow. It's funny because I think I heard an interview with him and he was like, yeah. I knew I was fucked up when he didn't say fucked up, but he said I knew I was messed up when Pat came over to me and was like, "Hey, are you okay?" And Katrin came over to me, "Hey, just want to make sure you're okay." He was like, "I'm that guy now."
That's a good experience for you to have in your first year, though. I think you learn a lot from that. Well, that was like that workout. I felt very good and in control in that workout, and that's what I mean. Like I feel like I was on the
Absolutely.
up and up there, and I was on the upswing, and that's why those events 6, 7, 8 in a row really was like, that's where my games fell apart, was right there. Those three workouts in a
Hmm.
row, like bad decisions, bad execution, and it just bad circumstance. And I lost so many points in those three events, and it was such a momentum breaker that it took me until, yeah, like I said, I think I felt good on that night event, but I felt like I was still doing
Hmm.
damage control from those previous three. Like I didn't want to do anything really aggressive. I was still like being careful. I was like, just put one on the
Yeah.
fairway was like my feeling at the end of that on Friday night. I was like, just put one in the middle of the fairway
Hmm.
and go to sleep tonight, and we're gonna fix it tomorrow. Because I just needed to like, yeah, get back on track, right? So that event five was good. I did feel good and in control and like comfortable in that one. And again, a good workout for me. I think when I looked at that one, I don't think anybody was surprised to see Brent do well at that. And that was like that was who I
Clearly.
identified as the horse initially. And I was like, cool. So I know how Brent competes. And I was like, I think I know where he'll try to come on. So I made the competitive decision to be like, he's going to push more in events rounds 3, 4 than 1, 2. So I'm going to get in front of him at least in round one, and then keep sustained pressure in 2, 3 and build a buffer. And then I'm just
Hmm.
going to have enough buffer that he can't close the gap on me. As hard as he wants to try in that last event, it would just won't be enough. Like that was the plan for me. And like it might suck at the end. Maybe you have to ski harder than you want in the last
Hmm.
round, but like just have enough buffer that it's impossible. And so that's what I did. And I did it really well. And going into the last round, I was like, oh yeah, like you're fine. As long as you don't fail a rope climb or something, you've got it in the bag. So that whole last round was just kind of like
Right.
not coasting, but just going through the motions and finishing the workout.
Yep.
I won it in round three. The I was amazed at how
It was
fast people went
shocking.
out, though. I will admit. I think that it makes you question a little bit. That workout is a discipline workout where it's all about like, can you maintain your speed on the rope in every round? Can you still, to me, what I identified in that workout was like, you win it on the
Hmm.
ropes, you lose it on
Yep.
the ski, and
Because the sandbag
transitions.
was
You win
irrelevant.
it on ropes and transitions, really. And the bag, I didn't really think, yeah, I didn't think for that distance, I thought it would be farther. I didn't think for that distance it would cause anybody any problems. They're a little awkward to pick up, so you could
Hmm.
lose a second if you like fumbled it on the pickup. But a guy like Hopper who ended up dropping it twice on the last round, like that was like he was messed up. So you're early on, like seeing people come out really fast. You just have to try not to let it stress you out. Knowing the first round is really
Hmm.
there's no there hasn't been time for separation. Like I was probably in like third or fourth or fifth in the first round and finishing the sandbag. But then it's like the second and third round pace on the rope climb stops. So that was where you change it, right? And so I just stayed on task for that sort of thing and um, pulled away, I think, even in the second round and then gapped a bit in the third. But yeah,
Hmm.
it was just, it makes you second guess your strategy a little bit at the start. Like I kind of went, oh, like maybe I'm wrong and I need to ski faster than this. Because people are going really fast.
Clearly.
But
Clearly.
in the end, I was right. So I'm glad I'm glad I stuck to my guns. But it is funny, and I think that that was the
Hmm.
trap. The trap was that people would ski too fast, and then your arms are gassed on the rope. Also, if
Yep.
you're a shorter athlete and you have to really grip the bag hard with your arms instead of being
Yeah.
able to link your hands, it changes the workout significantly. So that was one that bigger athletes got an advantage, or athletes who just took the time to hoist the bag higher and try to link instead of just grabbing it and using your grip in your arms. It made a big difference. So it was funny. I remember seeing Jason finish that one, and I did my field interview, and then I went in the back, and he had like a medical guy with him, and it just as it happened, like my bag, all my stuff was like sitting right next to him, where he had kind of set up. So I kind of like came over and the women were going and we had to like slowly start getting organized to leave once they were done. So athlete controls, I would always like they're already trying to get you to move. So I was kind of like I wanted to
Hmm.
give him space because I was like, I don't know, he's got medical with him. Like I don't know how messed up he is. So I kind of like tiptoed around and was like sneaking, a little bit of food out of my bag, and I kind of just asked him like, are you good? Like, do you want space? Like, do you want me to leave? Like, I don't want to be.
Yeah.
And also, I knowing it, like how vulnerable that feels and knowing that I also just won the event. Like that's the last thing you want. It's like you just got your ass kicked, and then the guy who just dominated the workout to come over and like dunk on you right afterwards. It's like I don't. That's the last thing I wanted to do, and I know that like I'm the last guy he wants to see. So I was just like, hey, I'm gonna like, do you want me to move? And to his credit, he's like, nah, like I'm whatever, I'm good. Just and I just sort of like slowly pulled my bag away and like just like I went like 15 feet that way just to like him and the medical staff that was with him like have your space, do your thing, like whatever it is, like have your space to just vent or like do whatever you want to do. And I'm just gonna go over here because like I didn't, yeah, I like not that I felt bad, like it's competition, things happen, but it's like, yeah, I appreciate the vulnerability in a moment like that, and I was like, I don't want to be part of the problem here, so. And he was good. I was nervous for him actually when I saw medical. I
Mm.
was like, I hope nothing is seriously wrong because I saw the way he finished the workout. But I think he came out probably pulling like a 140 on the ski, and that ain't it. That ain't it, Hopper. But whatever. We heard it a lot from people in the back too. People asked me a lot
Really?
after we finished. They're like, "What did you hold on the ski?" And I was like, like a 150," and they're like, "What?"
Mm.
I was like, "Yeah." So it wasn't a skiing workout. People, you could lose it by skiing like you were on a holiday, but you weren't going to win it there.
Do you feel like this games was a little bit more skill dominant, if you will, than games in the past?
I don't know. I've heard a lot of people say that. I think I don't think there was an obscene amount of volume, which is kind of nice. I don't think they killed anybody with volume, and I think most people would say that have been to multiple games, they felt less beat up after this year than most
Mm.
years, even though it was 15 events, which is more than we often do. So I think the most soreness came from like the first day, like a lot of the like paddle and
Yeah.
swim, like lots of pulling, and then lots of press out on the muscle ups, and then the thrusters, like lots of like press out on the
Mm-hmm.
thrusters and lots of legs. And I feel like everyone's quads and triceps were sore for 3 days, and then by Sunday you actually felt as good as you
Yeah.
had the whole weekend. Um, a little bit of low back, I think, if you from that snatch and bike
Yep.
workout where everybody just
Oh
muscle
yeah.
snatched, reefed the bar off the ground.
100%.
But I think that there were a lot of skills. Um, I think in a lot of workouts, maybe what makes people think that is that they feel like the skills determine the winner of the workout. I felt like there was a lot of events that had clearly one place where the winner would be
Yep.
determined. And so it was like the other movements were maybe less relevant. They were just kind of noise. They did feel like there were lots of workouts like that. So if you're like I'm a strong deadlifter and the deadlift was irrelevant in that handstand push-up workout, right? Like I was still good at the handstand push-up, so I won the workout. But if you were just a strong deadlifter who couldn't do that
Exactly.
skill,
You're
your
last.
your strength your strength got completely
100%.
wasted, right? Same thing like things like the row in the pull-up walking lunge workout, like that
And
was a
yeah, it was
pull-up.
90 pull-ups, right?
It was all about pull-ups. If you came off the pull-ups in a good place and your arms didn't feel juiced, like your grip felt fine going into that front rack and stuff, it wasn't that bad of a workout. The row was completely irrelevant. If you're a good rower, you're pissed. Like so there was a little bit of that. I think that, and that's what people see is they're kind of like, oh, this was determined by that. But at the same time, I look at there was a lot of heavy. We did a 1 rep max snatch. We did two
And
heavy
it
clean
started
workouts.
heavy.
One that was like a heavy sprint, and one, yeah, oh yeah. The first, like our fast clean workout ended with a 315 clean. And then you're like, Lazar Jukic, I remember talking to him after the second one, and he's like, 350 is like his like ceiling, right? Like that's like his best clean basically. And he's like, I can't believe I just cleaned 350 and came like 20 something. And I was like, yeah, I don't know. Welcome to the games, man. Like, it's like it's getting that way, right? So that's another, and we had a 1 rep max snatch, right? We had a heavy yoke carry. We had 405 deads for 30 reps. Like there were still that's
Heavy
5 workouts
barbells.
with
Yeah.
heavy stimulus in them. So it's not, yeah, like there was heavy stimulus. I think there wasn't a lot of the mid-range barbell cycling.
Yeah.
We had the 185 lunges, we had 105 power snatches. Uh, so yeah, like I can kind of see what people are saying, but I would say, yeah, there was maybe 5 events that were
Mm.
really determined by skill, but there was 5 events that had a really heavy stimulus as well. So, like, what do you want? That's reasonably balanced. But I would say that seemed to be a lot of workouts that were determined by one movement,
Yes.
which I think, in the CrossFit world, maybe people are like, oh, I feel like it should have been, there should be more balance than that, where, like an athlete who's good at movement A and an athlete who's good at movement
Right.
B should be able to have a tight race instead of like the movement A athlete just dominating the other one for the entire thing. So I think that there's an argument that could be made for that. I have to go through all the programming again. I think overall the test was pretty good. And frankly, I love the fact that we finished and I didn't feel like
Right.
super beat up and I could walk out of there, the last day we did a lot of pulling and stuff, but we touched a
No
lot of
doubt.
different
It just,
things.
yeah.
But there was just, yeah, I guess there was like people look at the crux of workouts and be like, I don't know, look at a workout like the pegboard, overhead squat, double under workout. What do you think was the crux of that workout?
That workout, I mean, you know, the way that they did it, right, where you didn't move your chest piece, I think was like the crux of that workout. It was really transitions, right? Because you didn't get to run that whatever it is 100 feet to go fix your chest piece, right? I mean, you had to get essentially right back on the pegboard. So I think because of the transition, it really became how fast can you do this pegboard? And maybe I'm wrong.
Yeah, it was a pegboard work. It was a lot
Yeah.
of grip. I think that, but I think that at the same time you can look at. I think the overhead squat, it was the underrated movement of that workout, because I think if you have good shoulder mobility and you have a good overhead squat position, you don't have to grip
It's
the
not as hard.
dumbbell as
Yeah.
hard, so you save your grip, and you can move through it, and then yeah, you preserve yourself for the other things. I agree. I think that if you had to move your own chest piece, it would have been a transition workout. But it was a lot about, and the pegboard is a high risk movement. Like if your grip's tired and you get up the board and you slip a peg on your way down, you cost yourself 30,
And
30
that's
40
the thing.
seconds in an
Yeah.
11-minute workout. Like there is no time for that. So I think it was a lot of risk reward, right? And I think having good movement on one of the things preserved that. It made the pegboards easier. So I would say that, like, I think the overhead squats and the pegboards were very valuable, and the double unders were a bit of noise. But you're right, it was discipline too. And I think people had to move faster than they thought they did. So, that was a reasonably balanced workout. People would look at it and say, oh, it's all skill, it's all pegboard. But I don't know. I did it, and I don't think so. I think a guy like Cole Sager won it on the overhead squat. He
His
squats really fast, and he
mobility,
has a nice
yeah,
overhead
is
position.
insane. God.
So, Cole won the workout, and I don't think he was better on the pegboard than, say, me or BK or Brent or, any number of guys. So, yeah, it's interesting to see. Like, I think that sometimes they look a certain way maybe to the fans as well, and they feel a little different to us. But there were some interesting ones. I think one of the curious ones to me was the yoke workout. I'm curious what caused the massive amount of variability in that workout. It was clear that we were not supposed to finish it in like nearly one attempt.
Yeah.
I think the people we talked to that tested it said that when they tested it, they finished. One of them didn't finish. One of them finished in the 3-minute interval at the end. And and we had a couple people cap. I think maybe 5 people finish in the last interval, but we had like 7 people finish in the second one. So how come it took people 3 more attempts, right?
Yeah. I don't know.
And I think the weight was right. I think it's dangerous if you go any heavier, particularly on the turf. But it was an interesting workout. Like it's funny. Like, and I don't know what the sticking point was for most people. I think probably the height of the yoke would be my guess. They lock us into choosing one of 3 different heights, and if you're barely getting it off the ground on turf where you're sinking in an extra inch and a half, you can't move it any all of a sudden. And if you get pinned down picking a lower weight or a lower height, all you've got to do like a full squat with 600 pounds every time, and it's not gonna be very good, right? If you get it up, you better move it the whole field. So it was interesting. There was some. I thought the programming was fun mostly. It was pretty cool. There was good variability. I think probably the thing that was lacking relative to maybe other years was barbell cycling. Would be like we had one barbell cycling workout.
Yes, just the snatch.
So yeah, I think if you're a barbell cycler, you're
irritated,
probably
yeah.
pissed. But I won all my workouts on the field.
Yeah, the
Oh no, it's a
handstand.
1-1 in the Coliseum. But like my finishes on the North Field were like first,
Third, yeah, yeah. It
like
was
second,
impressive.
fourth or
Yeah,
something. Like I was very strong on the field. So I'm good at like some of that outside athleticism stuff. Um, so it was probably a better year programming wise for me maybe than if we were just doing
power
handstand
cleans.
push-ups and like
I
power
saw, to
snatches.
your point about the yoke. I
Yeah.
saw they let's see, that was that a Saturday morning test? I think it was, or was that a okay, Sunday
Sunday.
morning. So right, there were the cuts on Saturday, right? And I remember seeing Jessica Griffith and somebody else had recently gotten cut.
Oh, Tim Paulson, I heard. I heard
Yes,
I heard that.
and
I didn't see them, but I heard they had
yeah,
some people test
so
it.
I saw that happen, and by the way, they didn't block it off. Like fans could be in there, so someone could have easily streamed that, and it was really interesting. It was not blocked off. You could have streamed it.
I'm glad they didn't because I might have
Yeah,
gone slower.
and then I remember Dave talking about it afterwards, and in an interview, and saying that we had those those girls and those guys retest because we were worried that the demo team was going either too fast or too slow, and we wanted to see athletes that had that cumulative volume to come out and actually do it to make sure it was right. So I'm wondering, and I don't know this. This is a speculation. I'm wondering if they kind of drew it back a little bit, thinking, okay, man, people are going to really struggle. It's Sunday morning, and not thinking that, man, I mean, Tia almost finished, right? I mean, literally, she was three steps away from finishing on the first one, and there was a couple in you guys that did the same thing.
Yeah, yeah. BK was like on the blue basically too. He would have been another 5, 6 steps out. Yeah, and I don't know. I heard they did that, and I actually didn't hear that they had changed it though. And I'm friends with James Newbury, and we talked to
Mm-hmm.
those guys after the competition, and they were saying that I don't know who. I think Tolo was one of the people that tested it, and
Mm-hmm.
maybe Khan. And they one of them finished, one of them didn't, and they got Tim and Jess to do it, and I think that they both finished,
In
but
the
in
last
like the
interval.
last round. And I don't think they said
Okay.
that they changed it. I think it was basically like, okay, it's what we want. Um, but yeah, I don't know. It's kind of interesting, and I agree. Like what it seems it feels like such a drastic separation.
It wasn't even
The
close.
difference between finishing,
It was crazy.
yeah, yeah. And I mean, great for me. I got to do 40 less GHDs than a bunch
Poor
of other
Brent.
guys, but I remember actually, yeah, I remember. Well, he only did one extra
Yeah,
round, I
what
think,
extra?
but I remember talking to BK before we did that event, and we were just like kind of talking in the back, and he was what what do you think kind of this thing? And I was like, I don't know. It feels to me like you just got to go as fast as you can in that first section. Like I think the whole point of it is to like kind of make your midline tired and kind of get you out of
And then go
breath.
do, yeah.
And I think that if you do it fast or you do it slow, you're going to be out of breath either way. So you just want to have more time on the
Right.
yoke. It's like I think you just want to get to the yoke as fast as you can and start putting work in. And he obviously took that really to heart.
Crushed it.
So I mean, and then obviously obviously I was right. My assessment was right, and I think the athletes who treated that buy-in as a sprint were the
Mm-hmm.
most successful. And I think if you were trying to be like conserve energy on the first bit, planning to finish in like the third round and being like, I don't want my GHDs to fall apart in like the third round. Um, if you were planning to finish in the third round, then you
Mm-hmm.
finished in the third round. And I think that the people who plan to attack the first section, a lot of
Mm-hmm.
them finished in the second part. And I actually, what I noticed too is I think in the first round, again, this is Sunday. I'm very engaged in the race with Justin, so um, he's a little faster on the GHD than me with his nice young flexible spine. But he'd come off like one rep ahead of me, and I'd close the gap on the burpees, and we came off basically together to the GHD. And so the first round, he stumbled once, and I got like I don't know what, like a 10 to 15 foot buffer on him. And then we were like fourth,
Hmm.
fifth, sixth, maybe in our heat at that point. A couple, I think Noah and Jeff, a couple guys on the other end of the field got significantly farther than us. But then the next round, I think that some people who got close, um, were, I think, started racing the clock
Yep.
instead of racing the athletes, and they started being like, okay, well, I'm almost done, so I can take my foot off the gas in the GHDs and burpees, and then I'll finish for sure in the next interval. Whereas, like, I think Justin and I were like still racing
Yeah.
each other very actively, and we looked at it as like, okay, I can definitely finish in the next interval. That means I got to go even faster on the next
100%.
round of GHDs and burpees, to in order to get a better time and to get a more of a gap on the guy next to me. So we were still very much racing
Mm.
that second round of GHDs and burpees, and I think a lot of people who were close to finishing, slowed up a little bit on that because they were like saving themselves for the yoke to make sure they made it across, and just making it across in the
Yep.
second interval was a win. So we actually passed, I think, three or four athletes in that second interval because we got off the hay bales way ahead of them, and we just got on the GHDs faster. Like we ran
Exactly.
across the field and got to work. So I think there was a little bit of that trap too, where it started to be just enough to finish to beat the clock,
Mm.
instead of beating the athletes. So it was a cool workout. I actually really enjoyed that one. Very fun workout, and fun. I think it was a collective win for the athletes because we kind of broke the programming, and we don't get too many of those wins. So I think that was kind of a fun part of it, to be like, to watch Dave kind of shake his head out as we walked off the field and be like, "That's not what I wanted," and we're like, "Yeah, we know. Better luck next year," and then just kind of leave.
I've got
So, like I said, collective win for
oh,
the
I got two more
athletes.
quick questions. The first one is this. So there were some pictures that came out of the deadlift, freestanding handstand push-up briefing, and whether it was staged or whatever, I'm just curious your perspective. Every and you kind of see in the foreground someone demoing this freestanding handstand push-up, and then in the background, in focus, is these athletes, and they kind of are like wide-eyed, and bushy-tailed, like, oh my god, like what the hell are we getting into? What was that the vibe in the room, if you will, when they were releasing this workout and releasing the standard? Were people like, oh shit, what the hell is happening right now?
I think there was probably a couple different reactions. I think there are some people who, as soon as that they saw it demoed, probably knew they couldn't
Mm.
do it or would really struggle. And so there was probably a bit of frustration and disengagement of like, okay, great, fuck this. It's like with two events left, they're like, God damn it. But I think a lot of the time when we get a new movement like that we have to learn quickly, um, everybody goes into like, how do I gain a competitive advantage? How can I make this easier for myself? How do I game it? Um, and you could see that everybody had a lot of the same questions pretty much. And so it was like 1,000 questions about how this was going to be
Mm-hmm.
judged. And it became kind of clear that the judging was quite subjective. Um,
Like a lot of
it
things.
was like, you can't, when you stepped forward, if you stepped forward and then you came down to your head too quickly, like you had to have a clear lockout and then down. So if you went ahead and then you went like you touched your other hand and then you started going down too quickly, no rep. If you didn't show control at the bottom after you had moved forward for long enough, no rep. So there was like, what defines a control position at the bottom? There was a lot of questions about like, how am I going to judge it? So it became super clear that we're like, holy shit, I wish I had 5 minutes to talk to my judge when I get on the floor to figure out how they're going to call it, because I'm certain there's going to be a wide range of variability between the judges. And so I think there was a lot of that. People asking the same questions, or having the same questions and asking a bunch of clarification because it looked like there was a lot
Mm-hmm.
of gray area. And so we were trying to figure out how best to navigate that, and then I think also accepting the reality that like, you are going to get probably a number of no reps that you think, or
Yeah.
maybe you should have
Got
got the
yeah.
rep for. Um, and you got to be able to just kind of like move past it. Like we know what the standards are, the points of performance. So like try to make them as clear as you can. And you'll probably miss a few at some point and it's fine. So be ready to move past it. But yeah, that was I don't love highly subjective movements like that, because it can create drama, and you end up with like all kinds of appeals or all kinds of just like, I don't know. It gets. I mean, we had a bit of that with the race between Justin and I at the end, um, where I think he ended up thinking he was done and trying to
Caught him.
finish, and his judge called him back for
Yes.
one more rep,
Yeah.
and then I finished.
Yeah.
And he appealed it, and so what they ended up reviewing and looking and was he had got a no rep earlier in a set of 14 somewhere, but because you advanced every rep, it was probably like a control, like I said, like he stepped and didn't show a full lockout or didn't show control on the way down, whatever it might have been that the judge called. They called him a no rep, but they
Yeah.
didn't make him move backwards. So he just kept moving forward. So he did what he thought was his last rep
Yeah.
because he was on the last tape. But the judge's count was still 13 because
Back.
they at some point didn't make him move backwards for a no rep. So they went and checked the count, and they were like, "Oh no, it was 13," and it was the right call. But
Moved
the
him
judge
back.
should have moved him back, or he should have moved back at some point. So it made it visually confusing. And so that was the thing. It was just like, yeah. I mean, he appealed it, and that was the call, and we were like, cool. But that's always the thing. It was a complicated movement to navigate. There was a lot of moving pieces. Like you had to advance, and you had to show these points performance, and if you get a no rep, you got to go backwards, and you got to, yeah. So it was a team effort, and it was hard at the end, particularly for us, because that race at the end was very tight, and it gets really loud. So all of a sudden you can't even really hear your judge, and so you can't see him because you're in a handstand facing the other direction. So it was just like, this is a very high skill movement where it's one thing when the crowd gets really loud and you got to like pull a heavy clean or something, you can sort of use that energy. But when you get overstimulated doing a really fine-tuned movement like that, I feel like we got worse as we got closer to the end, both of us. We started missing reps because we were like, it's like you couldn't control that energy as well, and it was really hard to pay attention to what you were doing. So, yeah, anyway, it was something.
My last question is this. I've heard Mat Fraser say quite a few times in the off season that you guys would send each other selfies of who was getting fatter. I just wanted to ask you, is that true, and do you still do it?
Yeah, I haven't. I'm not fat enough yet this season, so I haven't yet. But that is true. I used to do that to him all the time. And I think it's funny. I think different athletes view the off season differently, and we were always very much aligned on that. That it's like, you finish, and it's a long year and a lot of work that goes into it. So you take advantage of that downtime to the fullest, and you enjoy the rest of your summer in a way that you can't when you're training for the games. And he always would go off to like his family's cottage and just like do nothing but eat like a slob and just like hang out for however many days, right? And this year we came back, and my partner and I are getting married in mid-September, so we came back, and it's a lot of like, we're dealing with family, like we're organizing this wedding still, and so I'm gonna probably do no exercise until after the wedding, and so it'll be like, yeah, I've definitely gained a few pounds in the last little while, doing next to no exercise and just sort of eating as whatever I want and justifying it. So I'll have to send him one soon. And we'll see. He's supposed to be at the wedding, so maybe we'll get a combo photo. I think he's like bodybuilding now, though, so I don't know. Maybe he'll be lean and mean. Now that he's not in CrossFit, he can't relate.
Yeah, man, he's looking jacked. He's got abs, and like I mean, like he always had abs, but now it's like, damn, like you got abs.
Maybe
man.
I'll have to start. Maybe I'll have to start sending them to Justin. Maybe he doesn't. He might not know about this yet, so it'll be extra weird.
Just randomly, just on a Sunday afternoon, just send him a pic at like really sexy in your bathroom.
Yeah, well, that's the trick too, and you got to make yourself look like the biggest slob possible. Like you're like hunched over and like like holding your belly fat, like looking as gross as you can, like so. It would be it's a very good unsolicited selfie. So it's usually they're well received usually.
Exactly. All right, man.
Yeah, open that at the dinner table, and it's just like, oh man, Vellner's sending me some weird photos.
Be like, that's gonna be burned in your head for the next 365 until we see each other again. That's amazing.